His touch was hesitant at first, his hands brushing my arms as though afraid to break me. But I wanted to be broken, to feel something raw and real that shattered the cold, rigid walls I'd built around myself. Jacob's lips found mine, soft but insistent, as he pressed me against the grand piano. The polished wood was cold against my skin, a sharp contrast to the heat of his body. I had never allowed myself this, never let anyone invade my carefully controlled world. But Jacob was different. He didn't just play the music, he lived it, breathed it, and in that moment, he was creating a symphony with me. My fingers gripped his shoulders, pulling him closer as our movements became a crescendo, a desperate attempt to drown out the silence that had defined me for so long. Jacob's hands moved with a newfound certainty, his fingers exploring the curves of my body with a reverence that sent shivers through me. His breath was warm against my neck, his lips tracing a path down to my collarbone as he pulled me closer. The cool surface of the piano beneath me heightened every sensation. The contrast between cold and heat fueling a fire that had been dormant for too long. I let my head fall back, surrendering to the moment, allowing him to unravel the tightly wound control I had clung to for years. The rhythm of our movements matched the unspoken music between us. Each kiss, each touch, a crescendo that grew more intense with every second. His hands found my hips, lifting me slightly as our bodies aligned perfectly. And I couldn't help but gasp at the electric connection that surged between us. The air was thick with heat, our breaths mingling in the dimly lit room. The sounds of passion filling the silence that had once defined my life. I reached for him, my fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as though I could fuse us together completely. When it was over, we collapsed together against the piano, the smooth wood pressing against my back as Jacob cradled me in his arms. His heartbeat was steady, a grounding presence in the chaos of my emotions. I traced circles on his chest, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't quite articulate. For the first time, I felt both exposed and alive, as though he had reached a part of me I hadn't even known existed. I looked away, straightening my blouse as though I could erase what had just happened. The piano stood silently beside us, its presence a stark reminder of the boundaries I had just crossed. I should introduce myself. My name is Elena Strauss, and I teach piano at the most prestigious conservatory in Vienna. My life is a series of routines, a strict schedule of lessons, rehearsals, and solitary nights in the apartment I share with my mother. She monitors everything: my meals, my conversations, even the clothes I wear. To her, I am an extension of herself, a creation she can mold into perfection. Then Jacob arrived, a young, gifted pianist with an arrogance that grated on me from the moment we met. He thought he could charm his way into anything, and for a while, I let him believe it. I critiqued his playing harshly, dismissing his talent even as I envied his freedom, his passion. But behind the facade, I was drawn to him, to the fire in his music that mirrored the desires I kept buried deep inside. The second time we made love, it was on my terms. I invited him to my apartment after a late rehearsal, knowing fully well that my mother would be watching from her bedroom. The thrill of her disapproval made my pulse race as I led Jacob to my room, shutting the door firmly behind us. This time, there was no hesitation. I took control, guiding his hands, his lips, until he was entirely mine. The boundaries blurred as the intensity of our connection grew. Every touch and kiss, a note in the piece we were composing together. The music in my mind swelled with each movement, a symphony of rebellion and release. The tension in the air was palpable as Jacob and I stood in my room, the sound of my mother's footsteps retreating down the hall, a reminder of the defiance we were about to commit. He looked at me with a mix of desire and curiosity, his usual confidence tempered by the intimate setting. I stepped forward, closing the gap between us, and reached for the buttons of his shirt. My hand steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. This time, I let him. I pushed him gently onto the bed, climbing over him as I pressed my lips to his, savoring the way he responded to my touch. His hand slid up my thighs, his fingers tracing paths that left trails of fire in their wake. I leaned into him, my hair falling around us like a curtain as I whispered his name, my voice low and commanding. Every kiss, every moment was deliberate, a symphony of control and desire that unfolded exactly as I had orchestrated. When we were finally spent, our bodies tangled in the sheets, I allowed myself a moment of vulnerability. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the rhythm of his breathing as the adrenaline slowly faded. Jacob's hand moved to my back, tracing lazy patterns that felt both tender and possessive. But as I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just passion. It was power, a power I hadn't known I craved until now. And with that realization, I tightened my grip on him, unwilling to let go of the fleeting moment of freedom I had found. When it was over, I lay beside him, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, the weight of what I had done settling over me. Jacob slept peacefully, his arm draped over my waist, unaware of the storm raging inside me. My mother's footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway, a reminder that this fleeting moment of freedom would come at a cost. I knew it couldn't last. Jacob wanted too much. Love, commitment, something pure and beautiful that I couldn't give him. My desires were darker, shaped by years of repression and control. When he discovered the truth of what I wanted, he recoiled, calling me cruel and unfeeling. But it wasn't cruelty. It was the only way I knew to feel alive. In the end, he left, taking with him the music that had briefly filled the silence of my life. The conservatory felt emptier without him, the piano keys colder beneath my fingers. My mother's grip tightened, her presence a constant reminder that I would never escape her. And yet, I don't regret it. For a brief moment, I stepped outside the boundaries of my carefully constructed life. I tasted freedom, felt the fire of passion, and composed a piece that, though unfinished, will linger in my mind forever. Jacob taught me that music is more than perfection. It's chaos, beauty, and pain. And in that, I found a kind of solace, even as the silence closed in once more.